This is episode 4 of the Operation Paragon podcast. I'm your host, Gabriel Schickler, and today we are joined by Will Butler. He is an entrepreneur and the creator of Evolution Academy, where he helps people to build functional strength and to take their fitness and overall competence to the next level. Today we discuss how to set yourself up for success in your training, why you should stop looking for the optimal route, what it takes to see long-term success, and much more. So to get things started out here, well, I think it'll be really good to bring people up to speed with your story because you're a pretty young guy. You've built your brand with fitness and really just creating a lot of content with that recently, building your business, Evolution Academy, and everything like that. But one thing that I think a lot of people don't know about you is the fact that you started out as and still are a type 1 diabetic. And so you've, had this amazing transformation over the past, I think about 5 years, correct?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes just about, I think it's like a year and a half or 2 years ago now. But yeah, if you're talking kind of like general time span of when I first got into the gym, there was some other stuff that happened that we can get into. But yeah, probably like about 5 years, going from like no training at all to where I'm at now.
Yeah. And so you've shared some of those pictures of that transformation, what you were when you got that diagnosis and everything. You're sitting at, I think, around 190 right now. So just massively beefed up, got a lot more muscle on. And what I'm really curious is is that what first got you interested in fitness? Is that really what kickstarted the journey to begin with?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I was always like the skinnier slash like weaker guy growing up. Like, for example, like in athletics, like middle school, I was always we would line up every day from basically like strongest to weakest.
Oh, dang.
And I was always towards like the back of the line or like the last row every morning in athletics. So I was just always, for my size, for my height, always a little bit weaker, skinnier, that stuff. So I think that's kind of where it first started. And then when I first got to college, I would say what kind of kicked, basically my ambition in the gym to actually get serious with that. For a lot of people, it's like some heartbreak revolving around like maybe some type of relationship. But for me, it was more of like heartbreak and pain revolving around stuff towards my career. My goal was always to become a pilot, and there was some basically, medical complications there, some legal stuff that had to go on that basically, long story short, prevented me from pursuing that career path. And so I basically took all of that anger and transmuted it through the gym and exercise, and just finally decided to change something about my situation. So really my catalyst for getting started in the gym and just my own training, seeing what I could change on my own was, that would have been freshman year of college. So 2019, 2020, that's when things really actually like started for me in the gym.
Gotcha. And so do you think the reason that you didn't just, roll over after the diabetes diagnosis, do you think it was in large part because you had that fuel that was available to really drive you to keep pushing?
Yeah, I think that, I've always been a pretty competitive person, even just going back to like high school days and stuff. We were a very competitive school when it came to like marching band and drumline. And I was a section leader for the drumline there. And so that's kind of where my just drive for competition and loving that basically started. And I'm sure that you can relate to this and probably some of your audience as well. But when people start telling me no and start telling me that I can't do something, that's just like extra fuel for me. I love that. So, the fact that like, okay, the government was doubting my ability to become a pilot, also too with, that type 1 diabetes diagnosis of, on paper, I'm not the same person. My body works in different way now. For those of you listening that aren't familiar with type 1 diabetes, long story short, your body doesn't naturally absorb nutrients anymore. So I have to give myself an injection or wear a pump to, make that plausible. So a lot of things definitely changed, but I would say that it's just kind of my competitive drive And also the fact that I already had the ball rolling
Mm-hmm.
when it came to my stuff with fitness and Evolution Academy. Like the first thing that I asked for once I was kind of starting to recover in the hospital, like 12 hours after I went in there, was like, let me get my laptop so I can get back to clients and, work on training plans and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Cause, that's really what I'm doing it for is, obviously, you're there to deliver results for other people, but really just to prove to myself that, um, you just can't like just quit because you're not going to be a failure until you actually quit. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the biggest thing, is just my competitive drive. And then I already had the ball rolling. I already had kind of responsibility on my
Mm-hmm.
shoulders with that stuff. So it's like there's no real option to just tap out and quit unless
Mm.
you want to be perceived as a failure. I don't think anybody wants that.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah. And so over the past several years, you've built up a really intricate knowledge of just the human body, how muscle systems works, everything like that. I had a very similar experience to you, when I was in like middle and high school, just, a very scrawny dude. Um,
Mhm.
I started working out, but it was more just like, you would find like, watch this video, you just need these 5 exercises to get shredded abs or whatever, and I would do that for a little while and then lose interest. You started with a much better foundation, you learned a lot more about this. um, but what I'm curious is, for anybody that's, either getting started in the gym or maybe feels like they got a good bit of momentum at first but they're stagnating,
Mhm.
in your personal experience and then also your experience with, training other people, what do you see as the biggest mistakes that people make, especially early on, that really sabotage that, long-term success?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And to answer this, I'd probably just go and look back on my own training. If I could change anything with basically what I did, because when I first started too, I really had no idea. I had no
Mhm.
foundation. I was like eating. Um, there was a little store like across from my dorm in college, and me, and then also my now like assistant coach, Cody Smith, we would always go across the street and we would get these packs of like the mini muffins and eat those because it's like, oh man, it's so many calories. We're gonna get massive by eating these. And funny story, we threw all the trash from them into this like hole in the wall that was in our
Oh
dorm.
boy.
They're probably still there, but
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, if you live in Iba Hall and go to Oklahoma State, just like look in the wall on the fifth floor, and you may see them. But yeah, in terms of training and like people making mistakes with that, I just view fitness as like one big experimentation. That's how I view my own
Hmm.
training. Um, it is, as a personal trainer, online coach. A lot of this stuff is very like one-on-one diagnosed basis of you
Hmm.
really do have to get in there, talk with someone to really solve like an individual problem. In my own experience, I would say if I regret anything, it would just be I wish that I knew how to have a better focus on purely improving my strength first. I did a
Mm.
lot of just the kind of traditional, and this is by no fault of my own, really. Just the YouTube workouts you see, same
Hmm.
thing as you have, like, do this ab routine every day and you're going to have a six pack in a week or something like that. And really, when it comes down to it, it's like, man, I should have just found like a good solid program that was not necessarily like flashy or
Hmm.
had any like marketing, over the top marketing gimmicks behind it of that are just designed to clickbait. So I would say,
Hmm.
yeah, if I could go back, and for those listening, is don't necessarily focus on just like blowing up and being the biggest guy in the room. I think that's a good and great motivator,
Hmm.
but definitely focus on building that base of strength. I think movement and mobility is a huge aspect that a ton of people look over, because all lifting
Hmm.
is, it's just really you're taking a stretch and you're loading that with weight. So if you can get into any type of
Oh.
stretching, which, Cody is very well versed in that stuff. He's like certified and stretch
Hmm.
practitioner, stuff like that. So he's more versed in that stuff than I am. But I would say, yeah, focus on building a foundation. Don't chase after the flashy stuff. Don't
Hmm.
chase after the quick results, because if you do that, you may see some results. You may like kind of get down the line and get into things, but there's a good potential that once kind of the dopamine of those new results, wears off, you may fall off the wagon. So
Mm,
don't overlook the basics of like just squat, bench, deadlift, getting stronger on those.
mhm.
And the size will come as a byproduct, especially if you program it all the right way. So I would say, yeah, just build foundations first, and then you can focus on the flashy stuff later.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that's been really interesting with my own approach to my personal fitness over the past, well, I'd say 2 or 3 years recently, is like, I mean, when I started working out seriously, like late middle school, early high school, it was pretty much just for aesthetics and to like be more imposing and everything. But
Hmm.
that's so backwards because I feel like if if you build that strength and you actually have that foundation, the rest of it is going to kind of come with it. And then at the end of the day, like you see all these memes about dad strength and stuff where these guys that look pretty out of shape, they don't look awesome, but they can,
Hmm.
deadlift a ton, they have insane grip strength, all these different things. And it's like, I'd much rather have that at the end of the day than look great and get totally gassed after, running a few hundred feet or whatever. One thing you mentioned
Hmm.
was the focus on mobility. A lot of people, especially in like the bodybuilder space, really just focus on kind of that one axis of motion, just getting as big as possible. So, for people listening, why should they focus on mobility? Like, why is that important? And then, what would you recommend
Hmm.
specifically to train that? Because I feel like that's emphasized a lot less in the fitness industry than building strength and muscle and things that we've talked about.
Yeah. And it definitely is. A lot of like now there's kind of a rise of basically these holistic health, like fitness guys where, they're taking mobility as more of a concern, which I think is great.
Hmm.
I think the biggest thing is I love to combine mobility and movement because that's the biggest thing for us as humans is, we are designed to move. It used to be, you would get up, you go look for food or go hunt, and you're basically moving, majority of the day, then, take a break, rest, kind of chill for a little bit, sleep, wake up, do the same thing. So I just love to basically mimic the natural tendencies of the body as much as I can with my training. So I think a huge aspect that a ton of people miss out on is just the movement aspect, and the mobility will improve as a
Hmm.
byproduct of that. A huge, basically, downfall in modern society, and also along with the just kind of generic bodybuilding crowd, is like you said earlier. People are very used to breaking down the body to move in just these simple planes of motion, moving weight back and forth, straight up and down.
Hmm.
Which there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but if that's all that you do, you're training your body to move in that way. Same thing as, sitting in a chair. It's not necessarily bad for you to, sit down and rest and sit in a chair, but it's kind of the fact that, okay, if you're there for 8 hours a day, then you're just kind of cooking your body and
Hmm.
basically programming your body to think that position is more normal. And so that
Hmm.
way, when you have these people that, maybe work these desk jobs or that in an office a whole lot, you're sitting down for 8 hours a day. And then when you get up, now because of that, you have all that support in the wrong areas of, now your hamstrings are pretty weak, your kind of lower back is rounded. Not that spinal flexion is inherently a bad thing, but
Hmm.
you kind of have these natural weak points that start to pop up. So a major thing with my own personal training and what I like to get into the minds of my clients is everything is, posterior chain. A lot of that's where your strength comes from. That's where your movement comes from. Is, all the muscles in your back, your glutes, your hamstrings. Obviously, the quads are involved as well, but
Hmm.
a lot of your just movement, your strength, your security comes from being what's called back chain dominant. And being able to get into that back chain is kind of the big difference maker between people that are stuck with pain for the
Hmm.
entirety of their lives compared to people who can, move well, have good locomotives. For the most part, they avoid injuries, like non-contact injuries. So I think just kind of getting back to our primal roots in terms of being good movers, learning how to implement that into your training with some rotational stuff is really kind of the most important thing that I think is missing in
Hmm.
today's like fitness industry.
Yeah. And speaking of going back to primal roots, something else that I'm really curious to kind of dive into is you you dunk on the idea of optimization quite a lot. You make fun of the people that, walk around in the grass barefoot, sun their balls, and freak out if they drink tap water. And like, personally, I still try to do all those things because I want to keep my life dialed in as much as possible. But you're pretty aggressive, I'd say, a lot more so than many other people are in saying like this ain't it, shut up, just kind of do the work. So
Mhm.
why, I guess, why is that? But more importantly, why are you so vocal about it? Because a lot of people would just say, well, just let people do what makes them happy, or just, do what you want to do. So like, why is that?
Mhm. Yeah, I think, I mean, probably a big part of it is I just like to kind of stir the pot a little bit. It is kind of
Oh yeah,
fun
of course, of
to
course.
kind of, poke fun at some of those people. And it's not, once again, it kind of goes back to those things aren't inherently bad.
Hmm.
Grounding is good for you, like in the grass, walking barefoot, getting sun, like these things are all like agreed upon truths that,
Hmm.
these things are good for you as a human. I guess my biggest problem with it stems from like these health guys that are very, very strongly focused around like only holistic health and like
Hmm.
only supplements and making sure everything is perfect. Is they're not they're trying to find a way to like check out of the game to ensure like 100% return on
Mm.
whatever they're doing. So like if you can just figure out the perfect supplement concoction, then all of the problems in your business are going to go away. Or if
Hmm.
you just start grounding for 20 minutes every day, then every single financial problem or every single relationship problem you have is eventually going, you just do this grounding enough, then it's going to eventually like disappear from your life. And that's like a just a big thing. I have an issue with that because that's not
Hmm.
really how life works. And I think it's my job and my responsibility as someone who is in the fitness industry to, shoot it real and shoot it straight with people in terms of you can definitely do all these things to improve your life, improve your situation, but none of these things are actually going to, solve any of these deeper issues. They're just kind of like avoidance
Hmm.
mechanisms. So it's not that necessarily those things are bad. I think it is bad for you kind of mentally as a man to be so over the top, like worried about your health. If I
Hmm.
was, you know, and not that it's absolutely perfect or not that it's absolutely terrible, but like for example, as a type 1 diabetic, I have to constantly monitor my blood sugar. It's not like something that
Hmm.
I can just like stop doing. And so that means some days my blood sugar is going to be very high. I'm going to feel a little bit worse than normal, brain fog, feel slow, kind of sick and lethargic. Some days I'm going to be up and down all over the place. Some days it's going to be just like continually going low. And so that's kind of been one thing. And you could totally blame it on this, but it's been one thing of like, you know, I'm diabetic, and for other diabetics listening to this too, it's like I don't have that
Hmm.
optimization. Like, sure, I can do everything in my power to make my blood sugar levels good, but I'm still going to have, ups and downs, not everything perfect. So I think I probably, you could call it a little bit of projection too, but it's
Hmm.
like a lot of these guys are very worried about having, the perfect amount of sleep and, getting their supplements and their, cereal and in their breakfast every morning. And it's like, I'm not focusing on any of that, but I'm
Hmm.
still performing, I'm still improving. So that would be the biggest thing is like, just focus on moving the actual needle instead of
Hmm.
like making everything in your life fancy and complicating stuff to make yourself feel like you're getting stuff done when you're really not. That's my
Yeah.
biggest like beef with it.
So you're basically saying that there are things that can have an impact, but they're farther up on the pyramid. And if you don't have that foundation, none of the rest of that is going to matter. Is that?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good analogy. It's probably not exactly, well, it's not exactly how I see it. I see it kind of if you just focus on going after the things that you want.
Hmm.
Like let's say somebody listening to this wants to build a business. You want to get into fitness coaching like I am.
Hmm.
Well, I could spend all day or even all year researching. I could be watching YouTube videos. Um, what else could I be doing? I mean, I could be working on perfecting everything and just waiting for the
Get the
right
systems
time,
perfect, build your funnels, all that. Yeah.
all the systems, all the websites and stuff. And it's like, you can just start right now with like no tech at all. I'm sure
Hmm.
10 to 20 people in person that you could at least approach and be like, hey, I
Yeah.
could probably help you with your fitness, blah, blah, blah. So I think a lot of this stuff is just an avoidance
Mm.
mechanism for guys not wanting to actually take the first step, put more skin in the game, and actually like
Yeah.
improve themselves, have a return, and have a change in their
Hmm.
life, because that change and that success scares them. So it's a little bit easier for them to just say, well, let me focus on, you know, filtering. And it's not that it's
Hmm.
bad, filtering your water is good, but like, let me focus on all these external things that don't actually move the needle.
Hmm.
And that way, when I fail, or if I don't accomplish something, well, then I can say, well, at least I'm, living holistically, and I
Hmm.
have all these routines. And the reason I'm not making it is because of the World Economic Forum and the seed oils in the food, and all that stuff. And it's like, those things are bad. Yes,
Hmm.
100%. Or, here's a great example. Taylor Swift is the reason I'm not successful, or the Super Bowl and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, those things are not inherently good. I don't like those things either, but it's not a valid like target for you to
It,
shoot at and
yeah.
say, I'm not successful because
Hmm.
of that.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I mean, when you're talking about this, I'm thinking not just in terms of fitness, but starting this podcast, it was something I had been thinking about doing for, 2, 3 years. It was just always in the back of my
Hmm.
mind, but I just kept putting it off and saying someday. And then, just a few weeks ago, I was like, okay, like I've got to make something happen, or this is never actually going to move. I still have a good, a very close friend of mine that has wanted to
Hmm.
start a YouTube channel for, I got to say, at least a decade at this point. Something he's always wanted to
Yeah.
do, and he just never gets around to it because, he's doing the market research, and he's like, God, I got to shoot the
Hmm.
perfect video and all these different things, and it's like, at some point, you just gotta shut up and do the thing. One thing
Hmm.
I do want to specifically dive a little bit deeper into diet, because you had
Yeah.
I forget which one it was, but you had that Google Doc that you sent out a while back, several months ago, and you were talking about specifically kind of how to optimize, or improve the results that you're getting in the gym. One thing you really mentioned was avoiding the, like the hateful eight with the seed oils, and focusing on your diet and everything. But you also teach kind of the 80/20 rule with regard to nutrition. So how do you balance those
Hmm.
two things of, maybe not like completely cutting alcohol out of your life, or never, eating fast food ever, but still, getting those results you want in the gym and not really sabotaging your progress?
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great question, because as like a fitness coach, this is something that a lot of people have questions on, especially when they work with me one on one or anything. It's like, a big component of what people actually want is like, yes, they want the results, but they want to be able to get results in a way that's like friendly to their time. They don't have to do anything over the top with what they're having to cook, or like excessive meal prep, which I think is good. I think you should find a system that works for the responsibilities and the lifestyle that you already have, so you don't have to change too much.
Hmm.
But yeah, in terms of finding what works for most people there, for me personally, at least, majority of the time, I do avoid seed oils and just eat as clean as I can. Just very simple meals of, cook up a pound of ground beef,
Hmm.
eggs, omelets,
Same.
um, Mediterranean style kind of diet with, salad, onions, tomatoes, just kind of like basic clean stuff that's not too hard to prepare.
Hmm.
And I just try to carry that over into, if I have to eat on the go or anything like that. Um, Basically avoiding any high inflammatory foods. Those just tend to slow people down, both in the brain, kind of physically as well. it's not that you can't eat those things. For me personally, as a type 1 diabetic, anything that's heavier in refined sugars and
Mm-hmm.
carbs, processed carbs specifically, um, that stuff that's high glycemic, what that means is it just raises your blood sugar quicker and higher.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff is harder for me to control. So I just like to avoid things of, okay, well, if I'm going to go out to eat or if I'm going to get fast food, then let's kind of just take more of like a keto style approach with that.
Mm-hmm.
That works really well for a lot of the like fat loss people that I
Mm-hmm.
work with as well, because basically by cutting some of those excess carbs out, especially the processed, refined sugar, you're just basically taking the amount of insulin that your body is dosing for you every day. You're
Mm-hmm.
bringing that down. Insulin is a storage hormone, so that means it's going to help build muscle, but it's also going to help your body store a lot of fat. So for people listening to this, if you're just trying to lose weight in a way that's kind of sustainable, just like starter tips for you is, I'm not going to tell you, okay, cut out all carbs, you can never eat any carbs, but the carbs that you should be eating, keep it simple with just like fruit, white
Mm-hmm.
rice, like sourdough bread, and then, Saturday or Sunday, you can, have a heavier carb meal to kind of refill everything, replenish your glycogen stores, and help get your energy back up. So that's the biggest thing is, um, for anyone listening to this, kind of what I do, not necessarily just keto, but if I'm going to get something, avoid the processed and the refined sugar and
Mm-hmm.
carbs, and you'll be all right.
So you still do that as a pretty much a blanket rule, even though you aren't 100% like obsessing over your diet at all times.
Yeah, like
Gotcha.
as a blanket rule, like this weekend, like I literally had like some hamburger sliders and French fries. So it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
not that I'm totally avoiding this stuff. That's like the first time I've had a meal like that in probably like 2 or 3 weeks, to give like some context for people listening. But most of the time, yeah, it's very kind of just like Mediterranean,
Mm-hmm.
diet focused, or it's just simple of like, steak and some vegetables, just, keeping things simple.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I went out to long story short, I was supposed to go to a steakhouse with some friends to celebrate a friend's birthday a couple weeks back,
Mhm.
but nobody thought to make reservations. There was an enormous wait at every steakhouse in town. So instead,
Mhm.
the birthday boy just says, "Hey, let's walk across the street and get Chick-fil-A." And I sat down with these nuggets that I remembered. I love to eat Chick-fil-A in high school. And you start to eat these things, and if you're eating clean for long enough, like
Yeah.
your taste buds still say it's tasty, but like your gut knows something is wrong because it's completely just unfamiliar with all that processed nonsense. So
Mhm.
that was a really interesting perspective, because like I never thought of that in the past because I was so used to it, but now that my diet's a little bit cleaner and a lot more home cooking and stuff like that, it's just you almost don't want it anymore,
Mhm.
which is really interesting. um
Mhm.
Awesome. And then kind of tying everything back to success in the gym. You worked with me a couple months ago when I was working with, just a couple dumbbells, and, just resistance bands, some, just a crappy home gym setup. Um, Assuming that building strength is really the top priority, especially for people getting started. If someone is listening to this, they're thinking about taking their training more seriously, can they realistically expect to get good results with a simple home setup, or should they bite the bullet and just get to an actual gym?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think like optimally speaking, even though that's kind of hypocritical for me to use that word, if you can get to a gym, get to a gym. But I mean, like in your own experience from my training that I gave you
Hmm.
with like a home gym, I mean, even though you just had some dumbbells, resistance bands, I mean,
Hmm.
you would say with like my programming, you still saw,
Yeah. No,
good
I built
results,
endurance, but
right?
now that I'm actually back in the gym, it's like night and day
Mhm.
difference. Just because of
Yeah,
like being able to do like the standing cable flies. That's not something you can really mimic with a home setup. Same thing with,
exactly.
yeah, heavy overhead presses, bench press, things like that. So.
Mhm. And yeah, I think just kind of in general is like just start. If you're listening to this And maybe you've been in the gym, but you're looking to switch things up, or you want something that's a little bit different. You want to train for a different outcome. Just start, follow your intuition and start with that stuff. Um, even if it's like kind of like the most ridiculous thing ever, like if you've never bench pressed before, don't worry about having like the perfect set and rep and all your percentages that like I would want to have laid out in a program for me and what I give the clients. But like if you're just starting, you know, I would I would make fun of this all the time, but just to go in and bench press
Hmm.
for like 3 by 10 and just get used to that. Or, try a couple machines that you think you know how to do, grab a pair of
Hmm.
dumbbells, do some curls, and just get familiar with it. Cause then you're gonna be like part of your routine is just showing up to the gym.
Hmm.
And once you've established that, you put a good program on top of it, you put a good, nutrition like practices in with that, and you're good. You're solid. You'll get good results from that.
Yeah. And it's also worth saying, for anybody that's thinking about getting in the gym, like anything in life, you have to go through that phase where it's uncomfortable and you don't know what you're doing and you're afraid of, getting judged and all this stuff. But first off, screw other people. Like if you're in a gym looking at other people, you really should probably just leave because the people that are
Yeah.
serious about their fitness, like I go in and out. I mean, and now I'm like super guarded, trying not to make eye contact because there are all these, videos of women freaking out about creeps in the gym and all that. But like even before that, most people, if they're there with a mission, they're just minding their own businesses. So don't be afraid to, screw around and just figure out what works for you. Um, and yeah, like you said, just get comfortable with it and then kind of build from there. Um, and then as far as kind of setting yourself up for success in the long term goes, so like you've got that foundation built, you've got a good trainer, or you've learned about it, you kind of know what you're doing now. What would you say are the defining characteristics of, for yourself, the people that you've worked with, that indicate whether or not they'll have, that long term success with fitness?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is just people that like wear their heart on their sleeve and they're not afraid to take risks. Like I'm very open about the fact that you know there's been multiple jobs that I've worked that I've been fired from, just because
Hmm.
it's like the I just start getting bored of it, or I was working this one job and the fitness stuff started to really take off, so it's like I just kind of start showing up whenever I want, and whatever
Hmm.
happens from that happens. So I think really the best way towards success is people think that it's always going to be this linear path, or that if they can just create this linear equation for them to have results day after day after
Hmm.
day, that's very good like thinking for like long-term success. But really, if you're going to go anywhere as a man, you do have to have the ups, you do have to have the downs, because that's where that confidence is going to come from. You get the confidence from kind of those wins day after day, but you also establish the confidence, excuse me, you also
Hmm.
establish the confidence from when things aren't going your way and you're still showing up, you're still going to the gym, you're still eating clean,
You prove to
you're
yourself
still
that you
putting in
don't give up.
effort. Exactly, dude, 100%. And just the fact that um, you're not influenced by these outside
Hmm.
sources and outside outcomes. Like you're actually staying true to who you are as a person. It's when you kind of start chasing the approval of others or trying to fit like in, I think, certain boxes. That's
Hmm.
when you get in trouble as a man. You really do have to stay true to your own vision and what you want to do, and you do have to find new ways to challenge yourself. I was telling you this the other day. It's
Hmm.
like the points when I get stagnant and stop making progress is like when I just start like kind of coasting and just
Hmm.
chilling and not going for that next higher goal,
Yeah. And what is it that keeps you running so hot? Because I mean, we've touched a lot on the fact that like the not being able to become a pilot and everything kind of gave you that fuel. Um, but just like with
Mhm.
your consistency with posting on Instagram, and you've spoken in the past about how you've run on like 3 hours of sleep and just staying on the grind day in day out. Is that something that you feel like you were born with, or is that a skill? And if so, how can anyone listening, kind of replicate that drive and that focus?
That's a great question. And I don't think that there's any blueprint that I could just give to anyone. I think you really do have to, put yourself out there,
Hmm.
meet the right people, put yourself under risk, to really establish that. I've always known, like I said earlier on in the show, I've always known I've kind of had like just somewhat of a different approach and
Hmm.
outlook on life. But I really do think that that chip on your shoulder mentality is not something that you can just curate on your own. If you want to get to that point, you do have to start taking risks. You do have to
Hmm.
start putting yourself out there. You do have to just basically cut away all these surrogate things that these health influencers and supplement guys tell you to do, and just start chasing like what you actually want. Like
Hmm.
if you wanted to build a successful business, you don't need to follow all the surrogate paths of this excess stuff on top. Or like if you want to get in great shape, you don't have to do all these extra things. You just need to find the system that works for you to get you the results in the fastest way. So I wouldn't even call myself necessarily a grinder. Like I'm just, grinding. I kind of have these spurts of, where I'll go on like a mission for
Hmm.
3 or 4 days to accomplish something, get there as fast as I can, get in, get out, type of thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, sometimes it's not optimal at all. I literally, one of my roommates was texting in the group chat last night, and I can literally pull it up and read it. It was something about, um, Will looks like, let's see, Will looks like he hasn't slept in days. So it's like, kind of one of those things of, yeah, you just have to be willing to put your heart on your sleeve, do whatever it takes to win. Um, and just follow your intuition with that stuff. You guys know what you want to do deep down, so just go do it.
Hmm. Awesome. Powerful stuff, brother. Well, yeah. And then for
Yeah.
our final question here, if people want to learn more about fitness, they want to maybe get into Evolution Academy or just see more of what you're doing, where can they go to find that?
Yeah, so best place to find me where I'll probably see it to respond is, I try to respond to all my DMs is, Instagram. So that's just real. So REAL. And then my name, Will Butler.
I'll
Just look
put
it
it in
up
the show
and
notes.
it
Yeah.
should pop up. Solid.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, man, it's been great to have you. This is the second guest episode that I've done so far. So getting in, early in the curve, I'm sure we'll see you at some point in the future. But yeah, thanks, for everything you've done for me. Thanks for coming on here. I'm sure, the people listening really appreciate it too. So, yeah, thanks again, brother. Take
Yeah.
care.
Dude, absolutely. Absolute honor to be on your show. I definitely appreciate it.
Definitely, brother. All right. Take care.
Yeah. See ya.
And that concludes episode 4 of the Operation Paragon podcast. If you guys are looking to take your training to the next level, you should absolutely check out Will at Real Will Butler on Instagram. I'll have the link in the show notes, of course. He's gotten me and many others amazing results. He has a ton of free resources available, so highly recommend you guys check him out. If you want to get in touch with me, you can DM Operation Paragon on Instagram or email operationparagonpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, remember that greatness is within your reach.